Welcome to the Kingdom Doers podcast, the show where faith meets business, leadership, and coaching. We bring you inspiring conversations with business leaders, coaches, and ministry leaders who are making a difference in the marketplace and in ministry. Here we explore what it means to lead with purpose, build thriving businesses, serve faithfully, and navigate the intersection of faith and success. I'm your host, high performance mindset coach Melissa Taylor, along with my co-host and husband, Pastor Estes Taylor. Let's dive into today's episode. All right, well, welcome to the Kingdom Doers podcast. And we are here with Jordan Berry. And Jordan Berry has an awesome business. I'm so excited about this, this business that you had to offer, Jordan. And I can't wait to dive in more because this is something I've been really interested in recently as well. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and who you work with.
Yeah, awesome. So I, funnily enough, I'm in the laundromat space, and I can tell you a little bit how we got into that, but that is, that's the space that I ended up in, at least for now. And, because of how my story unfolded in this space, which again, we can get into if you want to, I ended up starting a laundromat resource. And that is basically a platform to help other people get into the space without losing their shirts, like I kind of did when I got into the business.
Nice.
And out of that, kind of grew this whole community, this platform, a podcast, social channels, YouTube, all that stuff. And now helping people achieve financial freedom through laundromats.
Awesome. That's great.
How did you find that? What were you doing? What made you say laundromats? Did your parents give you one, or were you in a laundromat doing laundry and said, I need to buy this? Or
Yeah. So how the story unfolded was I was a pastor and a youth pastor for 15 years. And really loved doing that. But there, came a time where it was time for me to just not do that vocationally anymore. And honestly, it was a little bit of an identity crisis for me. I did not know what to do or where to go. And I felt like a kid coming out of school where I'm like, the world is my oyster, but like, how do I navigate it?
Mm-hmm.
And I live here with my wife and two kids in Southern California. At the time, my two kids were, 3 and 1. They were little. And I had a genius idea. And I pitched it to my wife. I said, why don't we rent out our house here in Southern California? Let's, take a little bit of money that we got in the bank, and go buy a condo on the beach in Hawaii, and let's go live in Hawaii and do, whatever, sell jewelry on the beach. Like, who cares? We're in Hawaii. And my wife said we could do that, or we could buy a laundromat. And so I've never owned a condo on the beach in Hawaii, and I have owned laundromats. But the thought behind that was, she had a family friend he was working a tech job in the San Francisco Bay Area, making good money, but working a lot of hours, 60, 70, 80 hours. He bought a laundromat, replaced his tech income, and was working 5 to 10 hours a week. And we're like, yes, money coming in without a ton of time. Like that's the dream. That's the goal. So that's why we ended up going in that direction. It did not end up that way for us initially. But that's sort of how we ended up in the space, was looking for something that, could bring in money without taking me away from our 2 young kids as much as ministry was.
Wow.
Nice.
So never got the condo in Hawaii. Do you have any laundromats in Hawaii?
Not yet, but actually this is a scoop. We're actually in escrow on a house in Hawaii right now. So maybe over a decade later, maybe the dream might be fulfilled. We'll see.
Congrats. Early congratulations.
Yeah. Yes. We'll pray for you for that.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. That's amazing. Wow. So what an incredible story and interesting change of events in your life that kind of led you from where you were to where you are now.
Yeah.
And I'd love to know what it is that drives you every day with this business, and how do you help other people learn how to do the same thing?
Yeah. So, again, on my story, when we bought our first laundromat, things went south. Like I knew nothing about business. I knew nothing about real estate investing. I knew nothing about really anything, honestly. And so I did as much research as I could, but we basically were relying almost entirely on the broker who was selling us the laundromat. It just turned out that broker did not have our best interest in mind and sold us a narrative that was never going to happen. And so we ended up losing a ton of money when we were expecting to not be working a lot and to be making money. We were losing money and I was working all the time. It was the exact opposite of what we were hoping for, which was rough. And there were some really dark times in there. And I was desperately searching for the answer. There's this stat that floats around out there about laundromats, that 95% success rate of laundromats. To this day, I don't know where that stat comes from, but but it's out there. And I was like, how can I possibly be in the 5% that can't figure this easy business out? Like it did not mesh with my vision of myself, of who I was. Right. And I was desperately searching for who could help me. And I couldn't find anybody to help me. And so after I finally started clawing my way out of that hole, I, was talking to people. It turned out my story was not totally unique. Other people had similar experiences. So I just decided to start sharing my story, the lessons, the very, very expensive lessons that I learned in this easy business to try to help other people get into it the right way the first time. And that sort of evolved. That never intended to be a big platform or a business or anything like that. But it just kind of grew out of that because people needed that and there wasn't anything out there. And so that's really the goal, right? Is to help people achieve financial freedom through laundromat ownership, and throughout that process, I saw like how powerful owning these little laundromats could be to transform people's lives. Even though it didn't work out initially like that for me, I saw it happening with a lot of other people. And so wanted to help people get there without going the route I went to get there.
Okay, nice.
That's awesome. What would you say was, if you could do it over again, what would you have done differently? Maybe that one thing, and I know there are probably a lot of things, but maybe like the one thing that made the biggest difference in your process, maybe not have making that mistake. I know maybe choosing a different broker, but what would you say was the biggest learning lesson for you?
Yeah. I see that you're just out to embarrass me here and display all my naivete.
Hey, you know what? You said, ask me anything. So here we
go.
go.
I did say I was open book. Walked into that one. But seriously, like genuinely, I didn't know anything. And the broker told me, hey, look, this is what we call a zombie mat in the industry, basically like a fixer-upper laundromat, right? And basically he said, we know it's not making money, it's breaking even, so we really don't need to do any due diligence. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like we're going to put new machines in here. So, listen, I mean, I feel foolish today, but like do your due diligence, because it wasn't breaking even like we thought. It was losing a couple $1,000s a month. And then on top of that, I had to put new equipment in there and had a loan payment on that. So I was in the hole $4,000 or $5,000 before I even knew what hit me. And so a month. Right. And so, yeah, I mean, doing due diligence and having clarity. I mean, really it's clarity, right? Having clarity of what you're walking into before it becomes yours. And that seems very like, duh, like obvious, but it wasn't obvious to me. And I didn't know. And so, I mean, that would have transformed everything for me just to do a little bit of due diligence.
Yeah. That makes sense. So you don't know what you don't know sometimes, right?
Yeah. And it's honestly, I mean, laundromats are a cash business by and large. And so there's a lot of ways you can go wrong buying this business if you don't know what you're doing.
Wow. Yeah. It seems simple, but there's still some complexities you need to be aware of, which is why people will come to you, right? To have that guidance to learn how to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice.
So let's piggyback on that and people coming to you and your website and your business, the Laundromat Resource, the laundromatresource.com. We'll put that in the comments. But when someone comes there, I mean, there's consulting, there are membership plans, there are courses. Tell us about the laundromatresource.com. And when someone comes there, what should they be looking for? What will they find from you? And how would it make a difference if they have this dream or curiosity even into going into this direction?
Yeah. Well, and first of all, I mean, if you're going and you're just kind of exploring, like, is this the right thing for me? There's so much free information on there that don't go buying a course or consulting or a membership, anything like that. If you're just exploring, okay, like I'm not here to, yes, my time is valuable and all that stuff, but listen, my goal is to help people get into this business the right way. So a great place to start is there's a free course on there. It's 3 lessons long, and that's going to give you a super good foundation on how to actually understand how to buy a laundromat. I've just crossed over 1,000 consulting calls. So I know the questions that people have, and I've answered most of them in that course that's free. So take that. There's a podcast there where I'm interviewing. I think released episode 167 this week, right? So, and I've interviewed a ton of laundromat pros, people who are running awesome businesses, people in the industry that are supporting owners. So there's a ton of, that's all free, right? There's a ton of free information there. It's easy to get overwhelmed by all that. So don't get overwhelmed and don't get stuck in the learning loop of that. And that's where, once you decide, okay, I want to pursue this direction, whether that's laundromats or anything else, right? That's where it makes sense to start investing in that and getting the help that you need to make sure you get off on the right foot, going down whatever path you're going down, laundromats, real estate, another business, whatever it is.
Yeah. Nice. What would be the initial investment on average to own a laundromat? I know it depends on location and things, but on average, is there kind of a general number you tell people to expect?
Yeah. And there is a lot of, it depends there. And laundromats are, one of the barriers to entry is the acquisition cost, frankly. It's very equipment heavy. Equipment's not cheap. And you can make really good money with it. And in fact, you can expect, if you're buying a laundromat, you can expect a 20 to 25% return on your investment. Wow. That's unleveraged. So once you add a loan, if you add appropriate leverage to that, like an appropriate loan to that, that number can go up from there, which is really difficult to beat with any other investment, especially considering relatively small time commitment that you can set it up to have. But to answer your question, the average laundromat probably costs somewhere in the $250,000 to $500,000 range. But they go up to multiple millions, and you can get them for under 100,000 too. But just know, ballpark, anything $150,000 or less, I always just assume it's not making money and it's a fixer upper. So you got to have a solid plan on how you're going to make that thing make money.
Okay. That's good to know. I had heard about, fixer upper type of laundromats, and you find them that are kind of failing and then you fix them up, but you do have to have a plan, right? Like anything in business, you really have to have a plan. How are you going to strategize? How are you going to make money with it? How are you going to increase the revenue from where it was and put the different kind of energy and effort into it? So I like that.
Yeah. Just a rule of thumb, and this is a little counterintuitive, but generally speaking, for laundromats, the cheaper they are, the more risky they are. And that's a little counterintuitive, but getting it, there's a lot of like hype on like YouTube and stuff around like free laundromats and stuff. And while that's sort of kind of possible, it's by far the riskiest way to get in the business. So you just want to understand those things before you walk into them.
Nice.
I feel like that's a life principle. The cheaper it is, the more risky. If you're looking to buy a used car, and if one of them costs $10,000, I think you're taking a risk. Or if you're traveling to a new town and that hotel room is half the price of all the others, it's probably a little bit risky. So if you see the sushi restaurant with everything else in town has $4 signs and there's one with $1 sign, I think that's a life principle. That sushi restaurant might be a little bit more risky to jump into.
That'll preach, man. That'll preach.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Hey, that's what Esther says all the time. That'll preach. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, definitely know the cost of entry is usually worth what you're getting. So let me ask this. Speaking of that'll preach, you being a Christian, you having formerly been a full-time pastor and, trained in that place, in that space, and now not vocationally in that work, but still the man that you are, how does that translate into your business, whether it be your own laundromats and businesses and endeavors, or whether it be with the laundromatresource.com and your teaching and training? What have you taken from your, your Christian walk and even your pastoral experience, and how does that translate over?
Yeah, well, if you don't mind, I'd love to start with owning laundromats specifically, because I found there's actually like a lot of crossover there, surprisingly, right? Like laundromats are
Terrible time.
Yeah. Laundromats are one of the few places where people, communities still gather together, right? In like a natural, I mean, churches are one of those places, but we're getting slimmer and slimmer on places we get together as a community, right? Like I haven't gone to the grocery store and I don't even know how long. We just order on Amazon and it gets delivered to us. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like there's restaurants, Uber Eats and stuff like that. So, but laundromats still are one of the places where people gather together. And so there's really a lot of opportunity to, to build community at laundromats. And a lot of laundromats are located in lower income areas. And, one of the unfortunate things about our industry is that it has a reputation of, like, when you say the word laundromat, a lot of people conjure up what I would call a zombie mat, right? Like half the machine's working, half the lights are out. It's dingy, it's dirty. Maybe there's a homeless person in the back. That's what a lot of people think of when they think laundromats. And I think that is a huge missed opportunity for us, because I think owning laundromats, you have an opportunity to bring a lot of value and worth to a community that frankly needs that, right? Like a lot of times those communities are underserved. And when you run your business, whatever that business is, like the people there don't matter, by letting it be dingy and dark and unsafe and, et cetera, you're communicating to that community that you're not worth keeping this thing up. You're not worth the investment of, making this a quality business. But we have an opportunity as laundromat owners to come in and make a difference and instill value in those communities, and to communicate, no, you do have a lot of worth and you are worth investing in this business, and you are worth making sure that it's safe and clean and everything's working, like just business basics. Right. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to change communities through laundromats, which I think is pretty cool. Cause not a lot of businesses have that opportunity in the same way.
Wow. Fulfilling a need. And that's what we're called to do, right? And the Great Commission is, so many churches want to preach and then come back next Sunday and preach again, but it's like, fulfilling a need, and you're doing it the way you described, in a way that doesn't strip someone of their dignity, and if anything, raises the level of dignity in the community. I love that.
Yeah, totally.
And that's another example too of bringing your and you being an example of your faith into your work, where you don't have to specifically say, "Hey, I'm a Christian," right? You act as a Christian. You show up as a Christian. You see people. You see the ones who are in need, and you help them. And I think that's really a great example of that, of just showing up as a believer and being an example of your faith.
Yeah. And I think whenever you show up and run your business or just whatever you're doing, and like sometimes I'll get people who ask me like, are you a Christian? Right. And like, that's always a good feeling, cause that's a good sign that you're doing things right. Right. And I don't go out a whole lot, preaching at people and stuff like that. Maybe I should actually maybe do that a little bit more, but it is also a good feeling to know that people see that, and that probably more people see that, or at least see that there's something different there.
Yeah.
So and that should be no matter what we're doing, right? Laundromats, doesn't matter, podcasts, whatever, whatever we're doing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I hope I'm not stretching this verse too far, taking too much liberty, but there's this place in the Bible where Jesus says, the least of these And he says that when you do it to the least of these, you're doing it to me. And he gives that example. He says, hey, when I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was sick, you didn't visit me. When I was thirsty, when I was needing shelter, you didn't take care of me. And they were like, you're God. When did we see you hungry or thirsty or sick? And he said, when you do it to the least of these, you're doing it unto me. And I just see that in everything that you're saying. You know, you're going into a community, you are supplying a need. You're doing it to, and again, there are laundromats in upper class neighborhoods and there are laundromats all over. But the way you said it, sometimes they're viewed that way, or people jump into it with that mindset. And you're going into it with this attitude of, to the least of these, I'm going to give you something that will improve your quality of life, that will meet a need. Laundry is as important as food. You'll realize that if you're next to somebody whose shirt stinks, but you know, you're out there and you're doing that to the least of these, and that's definitely a tremendous witness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and also, you know, and I think the verse was, I think you're good. I don't think you stretched it too far. But also, you know, not viewing them as the least, and honestly, like, listen, when you own a laundromat, like, you a lot of times are going to encounter and meet, you know, homeless people, right? And it's difficult to navigate those interactions sometimes, because you're balancing like business ownership and, you know, that verse, right? Like that desire to want to help people. And it can be difficult to navigate, but, you know, not a good start is not viewing anybody else as the least of these.
Okay.
Not, I'm not refuting what you're saying. I think you're spot
I
on,
get it.
but
You're right. You're spot on too.
Yeah. It's a mindset versus an action, right? Like serving least of these. Yes. While at the same time, I think we do it because we don't see anybody else as lesser or least, right? Like that's the spirit of it. And that's the motivation behind why we treat the least of these with the respect and all that, because we're not viewing them as the least of these. And I think that that's part of the core of what Jesus was getting at in that passage, right? Is, you know, you're treating people, you know, who are seen as least of these as if, you know, it's Jesus there, right?
Yeah.
So spot on.
Yeah. It's a great point. It's like, you know, when we're guided to see everyone as a child of God, right? The Imago Dei, the theological, you know, concept that everybody is a child of God, that we see everybody that way and made in his image. And that is when we can get past that least of these mindset. So I really like that you brought that up.
Yeah.
And also with the community aspect that you mentioned, I did notice that because Estes and I, when we moved into our last place, we were waiting for our washer and dryer to come to be delivered, and we had to go to a laundromat down the road. And I hadn't been to one since I was in college, like years and years.
You got to go to a laundromat down the road.
Not had to, we got to.
You got to, yeah.
Watch out, look at who you're talking to now. Get that right.
Exactly. That's right. So everybody go to a laundromat down the road. Right? But yeah, I hadn't been to one since college, and it was really actually what you said. It was really kind of nice because while we were waiting for our laundry, we got to hang out, we got to talk, we got to meet other people waiting around there. It was one day we had our son, we had popped up the back of the car and we brought our food, and we were just sitting in the back of our car, just having a little tailgate party, waiting for our clothes. Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, it was great. A laundromat party. But I love what you said. Like, we're missing a lot of that in our community, you know, just getting together over simple things, you know, just fellowshipping in different ways, and not even necessarily with believers, but just showing up in our community and connecting with people. So I really like that you said that.
Yeah, that connection too is, I mean, it's so big, right? I mean, that's connection is like one of the core tenets of the gospel too, right? Is like, we've got to be connecting with the people around us, you know, and you can't be a light that's shining if you're not around other people. Right?
That's very true.
I guess you can be, but nobody's going to see it, right? It's like, tree falls in the woods. Anybody hear it? You know, nobody's there, right? The light's burning. in your heart,
Yeah.
and you're in your own house by yourself. Does anybody see it? Probably not.
Right.
Good
Probably
call,
not.
good call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
So let's go back to the laundromatresource.com. And as we wrap up, I just want to ask, who should be finding you? And when they do, I know you said don't go on, don't buy anything right away, don't do anything. There's enough free resource there, which is amazing. But if somebody's pondering, if somebody's wondering, who's the ideal person? You do your podcast as well. Where do people find your podcast? And again, who is your target audience? Who are you looking for? If anyone is listening to us, out of all the listeners of us, who should be the ones that you're looking for?
Yeah. So, I mean, podcasts can be found everywhere: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all the usual suspects of podcasts, wherever you're listening to this podcast. But listen, the people who are intrigued by laundromats are typically people who are looking for more space in their life. Maybe, the dream that I had originally that didn't play out the way it should have initially, of, having money coming in, but also having some time flexibility to be able to go to sporting events for the kids, or to be able to, go surfing on a Thursday, or whatever it is you want that time for, right? People who are looking for, to exit 9-to-5 jobs. One thing that I say, because it's true, is 99% of America could replace their 9-to-5 job with 1 to 3 laundromats. And that's pretty crazy to hear that. But it's true. And so, if your goal is to exit your 9-to-5 job, and be your own boss and do your own thing, and build something meaningful, laundromats are worth considering. They're, like I said, they're one of the best vehicles in my eyes for cash flow, but also for that time flexibility and freedom there. And then also a lot of like real estate investors who their ears perk up when you hear 20 to 25% return on your investment, average deal, before leverage. Those ears perk up real fast, because a lot of real estate investors are looking for cash flow, and the average real estate deal cannot touch the average laundromat deal when it comes to cash flow. So
wow, that is a great return. So so we can find you on your website with your free course as well. You mentioned on there, it's on your site. All kinds of free
stuff. Yeah.
All kinds of free stuff.
Tools, resources, all kinds of stuff. Yeah. Go check it out.
And what's the name of your podcast, Jordan?
It's Laundromat Resource Podcast.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, that makes it easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll link everything in the description box below, and you can get in touch with Jordan and learn how to have that financial freedom through laundromat ownership. And you might actually see me in there, because I'm super curious about this business model. I love it.
Yeah. Come on over and let me know if there's anything I can do to help.
All right. Yeah, sure will. Well, thank you so much for being on here, Jordan. We appreciate all the knowledge that you've shared, the wisdom, and even your faith that you've shared with us as well. So God bless you, and we wish you the best in all of your endeavors.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jordan.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on. I appreciate that you guys have the podcast. Very cool concept, very cool platform you guys got going on here.
Thanks for listening to the Kingdom Doers podcast. If you're ready to bring transformational impact to your audience at your next event, or master faith-based mindset hacks for success, visit kingdomdoer.com. There you'll also get your free guide on how to break through emotional barriers for greater impact and success in the marketplace. Again, visit kingdomdoer.com. That's kingdomdoer.com. And remember, you've got this, and God's got you.